The Battle of Seven Oaks in June of 1816 seemed to mark the end for the fledgling Selkirk settlement. But the following year, Lord Selkirk himself arrived to visit his colony and took matters firmly in hand.
When Lord Selkirk arrived in Western Canada the next year, the first thing he did when he arrived at Fort William was to arrest a number of the senior partners of the Northwest Company and have them sent back to Eastern Canada for trial. He proceeded on to Red River, where he was instrumental in helping the settlers, the returned settlers, to reestablish the colony there. One of the most significant things he did when he arrived in the colony was to negotiate a treaty in 1817 with Chief Peguis and his people in the Red River Valley.
Once law and order had been restored and their homesteads rebuilt, the Selkirk settlers were able to turn their attention to their spiritual needs, which had been neglected through 5 years of struggle and conflict. They took advantage of their patron's visit to ask that some provision be made for the well-being of their souls.
This cairn marks the spot where Lord Selkirk met with the settlers in the spring of 1817, and at that time they asked him for a minister to be sent out to them, and he said he would arrange for that. Died before he was able to send out a Presbyterian, which is what they were hoping for. What they got, of course, was the Reverend John West in 1820, an Anglican, and for 30 years the Selkirk settlers were ministered to by the Anglican Church.
For the Scottish settlers, the Presbyterian Church was an important part of their identity. Unfortunately for them, after Selkirk's untimely death, responsibility for his colony fell to the Hudson's Bay Company itself, which was largely English and Anglican. While it was Selkirk who suggested that the colony's first church should be located at this site, it was the Anglicans who got to follow through on the plan and established St. John's Church here.
The first church was built in 1822. It was of Red River frame. It, however, was severely weakened, if not destroyed, by the 1826 flood. Notwithstanding, they turned to and they built a stone church in 1832. It got done in by the 1850 floods, so they rebuilt again. And the third church on this site was the first one actually built as a cathedral in the early 1860s, and then this church, the one in which we're sitting, was built in 1926 and really got rolling in 1927.
The Scottish Presbyterians and English Anglicans of the colony shared St. John's Church and Cemetery for many years, in spite of their very different styles and practices.
David Jones, who was the second missionary here, he succeeded John West, noted in his diary that the Presbyterian members of the congregation stood to pray and sat to sing, while the Anglican members of the congregation knelt to pray and stood to sing. So that there was this constant up and down, and he got seasick.
Soon after Selkirk's death, the Hudson's Bay and Northwest Companies decided to bury the hatchet. The battle at Seven Oaks had been a shock to both sides, one that showed how their cutthroat competition had gotten out of hand and threatened the fur trade itself. In 1821, the two companies merged to become a single entity under the Hudson's Bay Company name. Fort Gibraltar was renamed Fort Garry, and Fort Douglas was abandoned. With these developments, the seed sown at Seven Oaks could finally begin to take root in the rich soil of the Canadian prairie.